You have appeared on Dr. Oz, Steve Harvey Show. You've authored 9 books. You are clearly making waves in the health industry.
I cleaned up lifelong acne, lifelong sinus infections personally, and lifelong GI problems. Like all of a sudden, when I changed my diet, woof, everything was better. So a whole food plant-based diet is the only diet that's ever been shown to actually reverse advanced stage cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Reverse.
They make vegan not healthy.
We've normalized obesity, and healthcare providers are afraid to even address it because they don't want to offend people.
Your taste buds change, and you can still have like different versions of the same foods that you love.
The less you have it, the more your taste buds adapt, and then the better you feel. I had one guy who was on 3 blood pressure medications his entire adult life. In the first 5 to 7 days working on this program, off all 3 of them.
What are your thoughts on the carnivore diet?
A lot of them have these new stories about the labs, like they're reinventing the data on labs now to compensate for that. You are going to elevate your cholesterol. You are going to see these things play out. You're stuffing your arteries. It's like the same coin and both sides. One side is what you're not eating, but by the same token, on the other side is what you are eating.
What trends or developments do you foresee in the field of plant-based nutrition in the coming years?
Right now, my main message is this.
Welcome to Julieanna Hever to the podcast today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Thanks. How are you, Jessica?
I am wonderful. You have appeared on Dr. Oz, Steve Harvey Show. You've authored 9 books. You have a TEDx talk. You are clearly making waves in the health industry. I would like, first of all, to know if you could share your personal journey and what led you to embracing a plant-based diet.
Yes, it's kind of a long, wavy, curly journey. Started back when I was a little girl. I grew up in LA, so I was a dancer. My mom says that I danced before I could walk. And I grew up in front of the dance mirror. And so I remember I was in ballet one day. I was around 11, your body starts to change around that time. And I will never forget because my dance teacher called out to me from across the room while I was staying there with my dance buddies and my colleagues. And she said, "Julieanna, cut out your snacks." And yeah, and it was kind of horrifying. And I didn't know what it meant because I was so young, but I knew it was humiliating to be called out like that. But on that day, I was like, okay, I got to know what she means. What does that mean? I wanted to know everything about diet and food and body image. I didn't understand that at the time, nutrition, all of it. So kind of started me on this journey that led me to here. And I just started reading everything I can get my hands on. Of course, this is before the internet. So I was just books and libraries and whatever I can get on nutrition and diet and all of those things. And at one point, when I was a little older, as a teenager, I stumbled upon a book called Diet for a New America by John Robbins. And this was the first book published that connected food, nutrition to the environment, to animals, and to your health, and all of them. And it was mind-blowing because I had no idea about any of this. And I remember by the time I finished that book, I thought I don't want to have anything to do with the meat industry. Like it was like, I just was really like turned off and done. But I was a teenager. I didn't cook. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anyone that was a vegetarian. So I was just kind of navigating the waters. Like, I'm just not going to eat animal products. And of course, my parents, who are good parents, are worried about me. Like, she's going to die. She's going to have a deficiency. So they enlisted their friend, who's a nurse, Kendra. And we had this, what I call my intervention. And they took me to a steakhouse and ordered me a steak with a pineapple ring on top, like a teriyaki steak. And I remember looking at the steak and thinking, okay, once you know all that, you can't unknow it. But Kendra was proceeding to tell me that you're going to be deficient in protein and iron and and scared me, properly, like, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I remember taking that first bite, and it was a really hard first bite, but I'd grown up eating meat and animal. Obviously I was growing up standard diet. So I went back, but I kept thinking there has to be more to this story.
So at this point, you found out about the meat industry and you weren't vegan or plant-based or anything, but you were curious about it?
Well, I wasn't at all until I read the book. I was eating regular, whatever everyone what everyone else was eating, fast food. And my mom cooked steak and pot roast and the standard American fare, that I grew up on. But this
Okay.
was the book that kind of made me go, whoa, there's so much more than I knew. And so I went back to eating the animal products, just went back to my regular diet, but I kept thinking there has to be more. And I kept reading and reading and reading. So fast forward to, I became a personal trainer while I was acting, because also in Los Angeles, we do a lot of acting here. And so I was just kind of in that world. I was at a performing arts high school, and I was going out to agents, and I had, I was doing some commercials and film and TV and theater. And then I had an agent again tell me, you need to take off a few pounds for the camera. I'm going to set you up with my trainer. So I'm like, okay. I'd already loved to exercise, but I fell in love with personal training. And that's when I became a personal trainer. Thought it'd be a great side or work while I was auditioning for the acting world. And so as soon as I became certified as a trainer, my first clients were asking me about what to eat. And I thought, well, I don't really want to tell you what to eat. I just read there's only one chapter in the personal training handbook. Funny, everyone goes to their trainers about nutrition, but we don't learn anything as a trainer. You memorize a chapter on basic nutrition. So I wanted to know before I started giving advice, because I knew how important it was. So I enrolled in graduate school. I thought I was done with college school forever. And I was like, well, okay. I loved it. It was the first time in my life that I loved school and academia. And I was just so excited because I was just like absorbing everything I could about all the biochemistry and the food science, so many amazing things, statistics. So it took me 7 years because I was working full time, and I was, as a trainer and all of that. But I went through my program, did my dietetic internship, became a registered dietitian. And then I had all these hints along the way, but I dove back into the literature at this point. And that was it. I'm like, oh, wait a second. You can get protein from plants, and you can get iron better sourced from plants. And all of my questions, I can go firsthand in. And that was it. I finally took the dive officially, went plant-based. It was barely being called that at this time. It was like 19 years ago, and completely changed my health. And that was it. Then I started implementing it with my clients, and then I started writing books and going on stage and everything. It was like my whole life was like, wow, this is the most important thing I've ever learned. And even now, it's been 20 years working with clients, and I still can't believe what I see on a regular basis, day-to-day basis. Things I was taught as a healthcare provider should never happen, like reversing disease, getting off medications. So it's just been quite a journey.
Mm. Could you define plant-based? Some people use it interchangeably with vegan or vegetarian, or maybe it means that plants make up most of your meals.
So there's no official way to define these things, but the way I've defined it in my books and from what I gather, there's definitely wiggle room, and you could use it however. And I think just the idea of the word flexitarian itself defines the fact that we can call anything whatever we want to call it. So it's just semantics. But the way I define it is, I don't like the word vegan or vegetarian because I don't use it because it's an exclusive definition. Like, a vegan diet means I do not eat animal products, but it doesn't say exactly what you do eat. And nowadays that's more significant and important, because now we have all sorts of vegan foods that are made from plants, but so processed that I'm seeing very similar health issues with the people consuming a majority of those products, rather than the whole plant foods. So I prefer to use the term whole food plant-based, which is coined by Dr. T. Colin Campbell, because it's an inclusive definition. It means, basically the way I define it is, it means I'm eating a diet based on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. And I like to say in infinite tasty combinations. So on whole plant foods, rather than processed foods, rather than, so that's the way I like to define it, more of an inclusive definition. And it also detaches the ethical component, because even though, I initially did this for the animals and everything, I'm a dietitian, and this has to be from a dietitian's perspective. So it's more of a non-ethical perspective. It's more of a dietary nutrition food definition.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm 100% with you as far as not identifying as vegan or vegetarian. I mean, I'm an omnivore myself if I had to pick a diet to identify as, but yeah, I think plant-based is definitely the way to go, especially the direction that I see vegan going in, with all of the processed foods and the way that they make vegan not healthy. And I think it used to be looked at as this healthy alternative diet, and yeah, they've kind of destroyed the way that looks.
Well, it was like when I first did this, it was like if I wanted to eat dessert, I had to bake it and make it from like whole foods. And if I wanted a burger, I had to make a, rice, mushroom, whatever nut type, I had to make it, and it was great
Mhm.
and it was healthy. And I was basing my food on really, I had to cook a lot and it was simple foods. And as exciting as it is from an ethical perspective, and this is where there's some dissonance or friction, is that how fabulous that you could have a bacon cheeseburger, an ice cream cone, anything you wanted, now vegan for the animals. It's wonderful. But also, I also want people to be healthy too, especially
Right.
even if I were talking as a vegan from the vegan movement, if you want more people to be vegan, you can't have everyone getting heart disease and the same illnesses, because that was the strongest argument that the vegans had for people that didn't have that, like weren't worried about the animals and the environment, because a lot of people don't, and there's no judgment from me whatsoever. But the one argument that they really could use more substantially is, well, it's healthier, and look at the lab work and look at the science. But I'm worried, even from that perspective, is that long term, we're going to see the science. What we used to see is like a differential between, if you look at vegan versus vegetarian versus, pescatarian, there was always a stratified improvement with the fewer animal products. But we're not going to see that anymore if you're looking at people eating these highly processed foods, because you're getting same saturated fat, you're getting sugar, you're getting all the components in animal products and processed foods that we were trying to avoid. So even for
Mhm.
someone that's an ethical vegan, it still behooves you to stay on the whole food track most of the time so that you could have those health benefits. But I also want to say that omnivore, vegan, anything in between, there's always room for stuff. You don't ever have to be perfect and stay 100% pure. Like I like people to feel like it's about progress and about eating the majority of your diet. And that's the most important message, is that it's what you eat most of the time that's going to show up in your health.
Mhm. Yes. Speaking of the health benefits, could you discuss the health benefits that are associated with adopting a plant-based diet and any misconceptions that you often encounter?
Oh, how many hours do you have? But simply put, I would say there's so much in the literature, and it continues to grow like exponentially. Like every single day I get research articles in the mail about how much a whole food plant-based diet improves pretty much every system in the body. So let me just cover the highlights of the most substantiated facts that we've seen in the literature over the years. So a whole food plant-based diet is the only diet that's ever been shown to actually reverse advanced stage cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Reverse.
Wow.
Okay. But it's also associated with a reduction in risk for those two things: cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers. Cancers are really tricky and complex, but metabolic diseases we're definitely seeing with like kidney health and even brain health and cognition. Reduces for sure. And this is what I see every single day: reduction in hyperlipidemia, glycemia, and hypertension. So like the three biggest risks for all those other disease processes can be attenuated with a plant-based diet really rapidly too. Blood pressures go down. In fact, my clients that come to me on severe, like lots of medications for high blood pressure, I tell them you must call your doctor right now and say you're going to be doing something very dramatic, because you're going to have to be very careful with the medications for high blood pressure and high blood sugar. Otherwise, you could have a real dangerous rebound, right? If you all of a sudden go down so fast, there's
Mhm.
repercussions to that. So it happens quite rapidly, but also health. It's really good for weight maintenance, weight loss. That's like a healthy weight loss plan, healthy weight maintenance, easier weight maintenance. And it reduces obesity, inflammatory markers. There's just so many things that are directly ameliorated with a whole food plant-based diet.
In your experience, what are some common challenges that people face when you work with them on transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle, and how do you address them?
Such a good question. And I have to go back and answer all the problems with the plant-based diet, but I guess I
That's
could put
right.
it all together here.
Okay.
Um, First and foremost, and I would love for your audience to know, I think it's really important to know that you don't have to be perfect. I think that's the biggest fear for a lot of people. They think they have to be 100%, can't ever eat anything off the plan. And I think that that's a real challenge for people, and it can get in the way of success, because you don't ever have to. Nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect diet. I've been in this health and fitness industry for over 25 years now. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. So that's one thing. So just like to just make the big choices and try to do the best that you can. And like, that kind of thing. The other big problem I think is the psychosocial. We live in a crazy environment. Our world is crazy. I call it the trifecta, the what I call the modern day trifecta of overabundance. So I work with a lot of clients to help them lose weight. That's like the majority of my clients, and my clients lose 0.4 to 0.8 pounds a day of body fat on my program. But weight loss itself. So if you think about just how we're overeating, the first thing is our bodies, our biology, we are adapted to survive. Like we are adapted to look at high calorie food and want to eat as much of it as possible to store in times of scarcity. That's the survival instinct. At our brainstem, you can't reroute that. We have not adapted out of that. But the problem, the second part of this trifecta, is that we are living in a society now where there is constant temptation and abundance, like constantly 24/7. You can have food delivered to your door. There's food everywhere. Pretty much there's more overnutrition globally now than undernutrition for the first time in history.
Wow.
Even around the world, not just in the US. So it's amazing. But the third part of this trifecta, which I think is the challenge that I was trying to get to, is it is normal. It is normal to overeat. It's normal to eat junk food. It's abnormal to say no. Like if I'm the one at the dinner saying, no, I don't want dessert. Why? Oh, come on. You want some. There's a lot of peer pressure and people think, oh, come on, you're fine. And it's so much pressure. And I think that's the hardest part for people. And we've normalized obesity, and healthcare providers are afraid to even address it because they don't want to offend people. But it's a clear health condition. I mean, a health risk, there's definite risks in the science associating excessive body fat and pretty much all chronic disease. So it's a problem because we have this mixed messaging in the media. It's like, no, you don't worry about your weight, health at every size. And, and you could eat whatever you want, balance, and all these messages are low carb, high carb, low fat, high fat. Everyone's so confused. And that's the biggest problem is our environment that we live in and how confusing it is for everyone.
I like how that you said, how you started out saying that you don't have to be perfect and that, that we do have cravings and things. I actually, not to go off topic too much or anything, but I recently lost a pet. And what I just woke up and it's like, I knew I needed to eat something, but I was like, I couldn't even just imagine like eating food. I was just very sad. And so I told my family, I'm like, I just want pizza, but like, I don't eat dairy and I do have like, a lot of self-control. So I didn't eat pizza, but I knew my body just was craving comfort food because I wanted that. I'm like, okay, I need like a healthy version of my comfort food. So I made, like a version of like mac and cheese that has like plant-based noodles, and you make the cheese from like potatoes and carrots and herbs. And, it's like you can do that. You can still, and that satisfied that like what I needed. And I also had, cereal throughout the day, but instead of milk, I make banana milk, instead of dairy milk and things like that. And it's just so great because I don't think a lot of people realize in the beginning that you don't have to give things up per se. Like your taste buds change and you can still have like different versions of the same foods that you love. And it actually, serves your body.
I'm such a proponent of loving your food. Like, if you don't love your food, what is the point? Like, you have to love your food, but absolutely palates shift. And that's what I watch in my consulting, my coaching work, is that it takes about 3 weeks ish, but like you can completely transform your palate. I've done it myself. I experienced it myself without even knowing, like it just happened. So it's and then when you're not giving yourself those really high dopamine hits from the very hyper palatable foods, the ones that are really high in salt and fat and sugar and stuff like that, that just your brain lights up. If you get away from that for a period of time, it's hard, but if you can get away from it from a period of time, it's easier and easier, and your food tastes better and better and better. And you don't even want that stuff as much. Not to say, because even after people have done it for years, if they have one dose of that kind of hyper palatable hit, you will remember. It's not like going to be like, ew, I'll never want a chocolate bar again. Like, of course you are, but the less you have it, the more your taste buds adapt, and then the better you feel. And there's this beautiful kind of self-fulfilling forward motion that happens when you're consistent eating this way.
How do you approach tailoring plant-based nutrition advice to individuals with specific dietary needs, such as athletes or those with medical conditions?
Well, what's so interesting is that in graduate school and in my internship, when I spent a lot of time in the hospitals doing clinical rotations, we had very specific diets per condition. There was like the cardiac diet and the diabetes diet and the kidney diet. I mean, it was all these different diets. And I remember you have to memorize all these little things, carb counting and, all the electrolytes for the kidneys. But it's the most shocking thing for me when I started doing this and working with all sorts of populations. I do work with all of those conditions, and I help people ameliorate and kind of like slow the progression of or reverse some of those conditions, is that it's a one size fits all approach mostly. Okay, really mostly this is one way of eating the way I recommend it. Like I've got all these mnemonics like the 6 daily threes and stuff we could talk about if you want. But if you're eating this way and you're getting the nutrients in a certain way, you can attenuate all of those things and thrive. Now, for athletes, it's the same thing, but you need more because you're depending on what type of athletics, right? If you're doing more endurance versus strength versus, because I work with a lot of athletes as well, then you have to change the calorie. You just need to eat more and more of certain things at certain points. But it's so much more similar than what I was trained about, is that you just really want to stick to these more things. Now there's certain things that pop up, like someone that has like celiac that has to avoid gluten. So that's easy to do. But, or someone that has, on dialysis, that's a real particular situation, but we could avoid that with the plant-based diet too, by the way. So that's when you have to kind of manage electrolytes. But other than that, diabetic diet, cardiac diet, it's the same, and it's as effective for all of these different conditions. So that was shocking to me.
Really? So it's the same diet?
Yes, there's very few exceptions to that.
Okay. I mean, honestly, to me, that makes sense, but I am surprised that there isn't some type of rule book or protocol to follow, when it comes to each individual medical condition or something.
Very subtle things like I'm saying, like celiac or kidney on dialysis or
Right.
type 1 diabetes. You may have to you have to time it around insulin, but it's so much more homogenous than it is in every other way of looking at diet, that it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah. Can you give me your opinion? Like, obviously you're very aware of the different diets out there. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the carnivore diet? How do people function as long as they are with that diet? Because it does seem like we need plants.
Right, it's a great question. So we are incredibly adaptable. Our bodies are brilliant. We love homeostasis. We could sustain things for long periods of time. You could eat a really bad diet and be okay for a long time. It will catch up with you. And I see a lot of people that are recovering from a carnivore or keto diet, whether it's very meat heavy. I see their labs. And actually it's funny because a lot of them have these new stories about the labs, like they're reinventing the data on labs now to compensate for that. You are going to elevate your cholesterol. You are going to see these things play out. You're stuffing your arteries. And but so now they'll say, well, cholesterol doesn't matter. Like, of course it does. We've got decades and we've over a century worth of, well, definitely decades and decades, like substantiated on what happens with high cholesterol levels in your blood. And so it's backfiring. So yes, you can get away with a lot of stuff. You could definitely lose weight. For sure you could lose weight, but you could also survive. And like your body kicks into ketosis. So it's able to burn the energy in the way that it needs to function. You can definitely get away with a lot, but long-term, not sustainable. That's the kind of thing we'll catch up at some point.
That just reminded me of the story that I'm sure you've heard of the man who ate an airplane.
No.
It was broken down and almost to, I think, like a powder form. But I think it was someone who just wanted to be able to say that he did that. And so, yeah, I mean, our bodies are incredible.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, I remember the Twinkie diet someone did and someone did. You can get away with all sorts of stuff. Our bodies are incredible, but it's also biology and basic physiology. And you do need certain things. You do need certain nutrients, and you do want to minimize certain things because they do have repercussions.
Mm-hmm. Can you share some success stories or positive outcomes from individuals who have adopted a plant-based diet under your guidance?
So I've now worked with thousands of people one-on-one, and I hear from my audience members because I've reached, hundreds of thousands of people through media and books and stuff like that. But directly one-on-one, I could go on and on. I could literally tell you story after story after story, but I'll just tell you some recent ones. Like I had one guy who was on 3 blood pressure medications his entire adult life. In the first 5 to 7 days working on this program, off all 3 of them. Very methodical
Wow.
with your doctor. Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
I have questions already with just this one. So what was he eating before and what did he transition to?
Standard Western diet,
Okay.
meat, fast food sometimes, was overweight. So I think he lost 100 something pounds overall. I mean, that was the first week that I did it, but like overall lost over 100 pounds. So, but just eating standard Western diet, it's like, people they wake up and have coffee and creamer and sugar. Then they have like a donut or like a sugary breakfast cereal or even sugary oatmeal or a bagel, which is just white flour with cream cheese, which is saturated fat. And then they'll have like a snack, and then they'll have lunch, which is usually like if they have a salad, it'll be like covered in like meats and cheeses and like fatty dressing and salty this and salty that. And then and then they're eating a snack in the afternoon, and they have dinner, and they're drinking sodas throughout the day, and they're drinking coffees with sugars and stuff throughout the day. And then there's dessert after dinner, and dinner could be anything, a burger and fries and whatever. Or even a steak and potatoes or whatever. But like if people eat the standard Western diet is real. And I can't believe how much people eat fast food. There's so many people that I see that just they're relying on it as regular part of their diet.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything going from that, even to people that think they're eating healthy, there's a lot of misnomers on what is healthy. So people come to me and say, I don't understand. I'm so healthy. I eat so healthy. I'm like, great, write down your food journal and let's analyze it. Even the vegans now, that's the thing with the vegan thing now, only now, where it's like I see, and whenever I see the health concerns, then I go, okay, well, let me see your food journal because they're vegan. So I look at the food journal and it's like, vegan eggs and vegan bacon, and then vegan burger and vegan, I don't know, chocolate for dessert, and then a vegan, blah, 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 like all the stuff, all the same kind of things, but veganized, slightly better long term than the regular because of the hormones and stuff like that and the cholesterol, but overall very similar because of the saturated fat. So yeah. So you cut that stuff out, and man, I've seen people improve their diabetes, like completely reversal of diabetes. Like they were diagnosed with type 2, about to go on insulin, already on insulin. And again, you have to be really careful and do this with your doctor, because especially if you're modifying medications, it could be dangerous. Like I said at the beginning, I want to keep saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people get off of that. I've done experiments, like a group, I've done like studies, and I've seen people literally go from hunched over, holding onto a walker, to standing up because all of a sudden their energy was better and their inflammation went away. So it's a very anti-inflammatory diet. It sounds so crazy. Like I sound like I'm like proselytizing it, but it's real. I've witnessed it.
Uh,
But, when you're anti-inflamed, like you're getting rid of, people have lifelong pain. I have clients every day. Oh, I walk down the stairs. Now I'm jumping up the stairs, because like they don't have the pain in their knees and the pain in their joints and stuff from all the arthritis and stuff, because it attenuates the inflammation in the joints. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on. I can't believe the things I've seen. It's mind blowing. And every day I'm like, wow, this is real. This is legit. And I watch the labs too. I watch my clients before and after labs. And I've worked with people for years at a time. So I've watched that kind of unfold. Definitely weight losses too. Again, my clients lose 0.4 to 0.8 pounds a day, which is, so many people struggle with their weight. You don't have to. So I literally can go on and on about the extraordinary results. And it sounds crazy to say it out loud, but I've witnessed it and witnessed it and witnessed it.
mm-hmm. I don't want to move on from this just yet, but to your point, when people do write down, like keep a food journal after they think that they're eating healthy, which they truly do. And that's the thing, like you were saying previously, you don't know what to believe because there's so much misinformation, everything counterdicts everything. And so
Yeah.
you can find information that an apple is healthy, or you can find that an apple is unhealthy. And it's the same for every piece of food, whether it's fruit, vegetables, meats, fish, even processed foods, or like the vegan alternatives that are processed. There is evidence or studies that backs up the claims that it's healthy and unhealthy. So if someone believes, I almost think that if they want to eat a certain way, then they will find the evidence that backs up the way that they want to eat. And so in their mind, it is healthy. And so when you do look at what they're eating, it's very easy to see, like, you know, these are the things that are hanging you up. So then basically what you're saying is once you remove those things and you replace it with plants, that's when you start seeing the big shifts.
Well, you said a lot of really good nuggets in there. It's like the same coin and both sides. One side is what you're not eating, but by the same token, on the other side is what you are eating. So you're getting rid of these things like saturated fat and heme iron and stuff that are pro-inflammatory. And on the same token, you are eating things that are anti-inflammatory and phytonutrients and fiber and things that we know are good for the microbiome. So many mechanisms of action, by the way, so many reasons that these things all work in tandem, like all these beautiful synergistic things that take place in the body, these cascades of effects that happen from the same choices. So it's, yeah. But on your point too, it took me, I think I want to say 10 years maybe of practicing dietetics after I was a dietitian, to stop trying to convince anyone. I refuse. I will not try to convince you to eat a certain way. I'm done. I was like, why am I beating my head against the wall? And I'm not getting the results that I wanted when I first started. Cause I was like, because literally I cleaned up lifelong acne, lifelong sinus infections personally, and lifelong GI problems. Like all of a sudden, when I changed my diet, woof, everything was better. So I was like, oh my gosh, everyone needs to know about this. So I was that annoying person at dinner saying, you don't want to eat that. That's got, you know, and then I realized I was losing friends and family. I was trying to convince clients that were coming to me for random things. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, no. So now my theory is, and what I practice is be a lighthouse, not a tugboat. Role model it, don't pull. So if you come to me and say, okay, tell me why I need to eat this way, because I heard that blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what, you do that. And there's a million dietitians that'll help you. If you want to try my way, I will show you what it'll do for you. I will love you all the way through it, but I'm not going to try to convince anyone ever again.
I'm laughing because I was in the exact same boat. It's like once you find something that works, you just want to tell the whole world, and yeah, you become that annoying person, and it's not received very well, even though the intention is there.
Exactly. No, it was really bad. I literally did lose friends, and my family did not want to eat with me. So I'm like, okay, I gotta get over this. And so, yeah, it's a hard lesson, but it's important.
And now it's actually serving you and thousands of other people. So I want to stay on this gentleman client of yours real quick. So he was able to get off 3 medications in 7 days. And what happens once he changes his diet? I mean, for me, it happened so gradually, and I would have setbacks. Like I would go back and touch the hot stove.
Yeah.
And so how do you handle that, or what happens when your clients do that?
Okay. So I remind my clients every time, you are human.
Mm-hmm.
You are human. And I really practice and remind everyone radical self-compassion, because again, we live in a crazy world with food. Like, I mean, our world is crazy, but I mean, specifically dietarily, our world is insane. I mean, I think it's the most controversial of all the fields, like even of all the sciences, right? Like no one's really going to argue about like, is carbon, whatever, like this chemical versus that chemical. No, we know that, right? Or physiology, like, no, this is how the cardiovascular system works. It's not controversial, but everybody eats and everybody has an opinion about food. So like you said, you can go to the literature and confirm, oh no, I've received the study that apples are bad for you. You know, but really, so anyone could defend whatever position they have. So first of all, you're human. We'll go back to that. You are human. You are going to deviate. But what's so cool is that once, like I ask people like, okay, let's do, like, I love to do a 6-week transformation program with my clients, because like, let's dive in. And I won't take anyone that's not ready. Like I really weed out my clients. Like I will interview my clients to make sure that they're ready and that it's a good fit. Because if you go all in for 6 weeks, and you could tiptoe in too, but if you're committed to tiptoeing in, if you're committed to doing this, let's say that, you will start to feel and see the advantages. And like I said, for me, it took me 20 years to go through this transition, something like 20 years. So I really tiptoed in, and that's fine, but look, it sticks, you know? So I think if you just commit to it and then you start to see that beautiful unfolding of events, and oh my gosh, I have energy for the first time in my life, and oh, I want to exercise more, or oh, I really want to eat. It just feeds itself. It's like, well, now I really want to eat this way. And then what's really cool in a really fun kind of, I don't know, nefarious way, is like, oh, then you have the bad meal. Bad, I don't like to say bad, but like an off-plan meal, right? A real decadent meal. Like I call it a day of deliciousness, like a decadent meal. So you eat your decadent meal, you will feel it. You will go, oh yes, this is why I like the other way of eating. Like it reminds you. And that's great. And I encourage my clients to do that, because it's like, now you remember why this is so effective and what is so great and why you're motivated. And my first assignment, I just had a new client start today, and I'm like, okay, I want you to write down what it feels like to be in the driver's seat, and why do you want this? Because all the time you're going to get temptation. Now we're at the holidays, temptation. You have to be wanting that delayed gratification so much that in the face of this constant temptation, you can most of the time say, no, I really want this more. But it's not until you really feel and see the tangible results of viscerally feel them that it makes it much easier going forward. So, but reminding yourself you're human and there's no such thing as perfection is a really important component.
That just gave me a really good visual of like bumpers. I don't know, like if you're in like a boat or you're bowling or something, and you kind of, it veers to the side, and maybe that's like your meal. Like maybe you're tired and you're hungry, you didn't prep food, and you eat pizza, or I don't know why I keep referring to pizza, but you have you have whatever meal it is that you're craving, and then you feel it afterwards, and you kind of divert back the other way, and you're like, oh, let me get back on track. And it happens each time it happens, you feel it more and more, and it just becomes louder, because you realize how good you can feel, and you get addicted to that feeling.
I love that idea of bumpers. And I also, on the same token of, I tell people, when you feel the day after the day of decadence, really feel it. Like let yourself go, ooh, like my stomach and my, ugh, like that feel it. Be mindful. I do a lot of mindfulness work with my clients. And on the flip side of that, those days that you've been sustaining the consistency of the diet, the on-plan way of eating for a few days, really take a moment with how that feels too. Because the more aware you are, then you're making decisions based on what you know, and you're using your wisdom and experience to make decisions going forward. And I always say, once you know, you can't unknow. And it's powerful. It's a powerful motivator in both directions.
Could only imagine the doctor's reactions when their patients come in and they're off of all their meds. Do they ever, I mean, are they ever hesitant to take them off? Are they ever wondering, who is this person you're working with? How did she do this?
I really believe, since I've been doing this for so long, and I used to speak to audiences of physicians. I've written like medical journal papers as well for healthcare, for physicians, two guides for physicians. So I've spoken in these audiences. And when I first started, there'd be a few in the audience. And now my last one right before COVID was like 2,000 physicians and healthcare professionals in the audience. So they're growing. And I really believe that the main reason so many healthcare professionals are going in this direction, because remember, doctors don't get nutrition. They get very minimal nutrition in their education. And I was married, my ex-husband is a doctor. So I used to go to all these doctors like meetings and expos, and I've done ground rounds. I've given ground rounds to them. So I'm very familiar with what they know and how, we're like all the different types of practices and different, all the different fields. And I really believe that a lot of people have gone in that direction because their patients came back to them in those situations. They're like, wow, what did you do? And they're like, whoa, it's like mind blowing, because they don't see that typically. Like we are trained, as all healthcare providers are trained, that my role as a dietitian, and a lot of the physicians through medicine, but me with food, I was trained that my role is to, my doorbell's ringing and nobody ever, oh, it's Amazon. Sorry. Cyber Monday. So I was trained that my role is to mitigate the progression of disease in my patients. My role is to mitigate the need to increase medication doses. And that's for the doctors, right, as well. But what we're seeing is you can actually do way more than that. Like I said, reverse conditions, get off medications. And I think when the physicians are seeing their patients come back, and even if they're hesitant, I've seen a lot of them very hesitant. Well, I won't take you off your meds. Well, you have to. If your blood pressure is so low that you're passing out, that's dangerous to say, no, you can't lower your medication. But, in certain ones where they're like, well, I'm worried about this. Well, then sometimes I'll have my clients say, okay, ask them to give you 3 months and then redo your blood work. So it's like we convince them. Some are like, no, this is never going to work. And a lot of the older school, like traditionalists that have been doing this for way too long, they're just like, nothing else could happen. Sometimes they won't open their eyes to it. But I think that's why it's exploded, partly is because of the grassroots movement upwards into the healthcare world.
Mm-hmm. With the growing popularity of plant-based diets, what trends or developments do you foresee in the field of plant-based nutrition in the coming years?
Well, I didn't predict this onslaught of junk food. I didn't. It started and I was like, oh, this is good. Okay, good. We have options. But now it's like, I mean, now you have it at every fast food restaurant. And while I celebrate that, I'm also, again, as a healthcare provider, worried about the people that are coming to me so we need to learn how to do that. And I've been, people hire me to do my projections for this very question you're asking. And I think we've gone pretty far. I think we're going to have to go in it. I think it's played out, to be honest. I don't even really, I'm trying to I'm even moving my practice I don't even focus on the plant-based thing. I think we already know what we can do. I'm sure there'll be other things like with sustainability and maybe more packaging types of things. I hope there's a backlash with the junky food stuff and we get more to convenient health food. I would love to see restaurants and products that were actually whole food plant-based, not just animal-free junk food. Vegan is not the same. To say, I don't want animal-free junk food. I want healthy plant food to be more accessible. So I hope we go in the direction of having packaged foods and frozen foods that are whole food. And there are some, but we have to get better at that. So that's kind of the direction I hope that it proliferates in.
Yeah. This question is along the same lines. You've been involved in public speaking and education. What are some key messages that you aim to convey when speaking about plant-based nutrition to diverse audiences?
That's such a great question. I recently spoken, I just spoke in Brazil at a couple of healthcare conferences with thousands of healthcare providers. And then I was in Thailand speaking, and I was in the East Coast of it. I've been a lot of places. It's just this in the last few months. And my message is over the years, it's been a long time. And I think right now my main message is this: simple, keep it simple. Don't be perfect. Don't tell your patients you need to eat a low glycemic, moderate protein, low fat diet, because nobody knows what the heck that means. Tell people eat more fruits and vegetables, aim for 10 fruits and servings of fruits and vegetables a day, less processed foods, less animal products. If you just said that to your patients, they would know what that means. But this whole low carb, high carb, all this stuff that just people don't even know, and measure this and weigh that and count. It's so overwhelming, and people are throwing in the towel. I'm just going to fast food. I can't do this. And that's dangerous. I think if we could simplify the message, and I want everything about this to be simple, I think that will help the most amount of people, because I think that's why we're still not improving. That's why chronic disease and obesity rates just keep going up, 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 up. And I see it every day. I mean, it's so sad because, again, be a lighthouse, not a tugboat. But when it's your people, like my children, my parents, the people I love more than anything on this planet, it kills me. And I had this epiphany, because it was I know this and I've been doing this for so long. But a couple of years ago, my dad was had a near-death experience, really. He had a really bad stroke and blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't get to him because he was out of the country and I couldn't my passport to COVID. So he finally came to, and we're on FaceTime together. I'm like, Dad, what's going on? He's like, well, and he eats horrible. He eats horrible, but he laughs at me. And I'll tell you why. So he's like, well, I've been eating kind of a little bit off. I'm like, well, Dad, this is what I do. I could help you. And he knows. He's read my books and seen me speak and seen me on TV. And he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, Jewel, you have to want it. Right. And then his doctor said, don't worry, just don't drink coffee or alcohol and you'll be fine. Doesn't matter what you eat. So his doctor gave him the blessing, which is malpractice, literally. So now why would he listen to me? His doctor said, it's fine, eat whatever you want. Why should I take away his bacon and eggs,
That is so painful to hear, because I understand it so well. And I just can only imagine being in that. I mean, my father hasn't had a near-death experience, but I could definitely relate with that. And it can be so aggravating when the people that are above you with their title or, you know, their social status, that they can overpower you, even though you know that what you're teaching and what you're, you know, that what you're teaching is what works versus the modern medicine.
I don't even think it has to do with status too. I think because this has happened elsewhere, you know, like, a cousin told my dad, "Oh, plant-based." And he's like, "Oh, well, so-and-so has a PhD." So it doesn't even matter. This is what it is. People want to hear what they want to hear. So they'll look
Yes.
for the evidence. Just like you said, "Oh, well, I know that apples are bad for me. Here's the study. I know that bacon is fine for me. Here's the doctor, or here's my friend that said that." You look for the evidence you want to support your narrative because it's so hard to change. And you have to want it so badly. So that's what I say to my clients. Like, I won't work with someone unless they want it so badly that they're ready to do this. Because you are going to have to say no to things you want. I love vegan pizza too. Love pizza. And I love bread in the basket. And I love chocolate chip cookies. And I make a healthy chocolate chip cookie. But I can't do that all the time. Like, I have to really, like, I know that I can't have that all the time. That's not going to serve my goals. So we have to say no to things sometimes. And it's not easy. It's much easier to just have whatever you want, whenever you want, and do whatever you want. But that's not how our bodies work. So
I think that I think that this episode has to have pizza in the title.
I agree.
I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, where can people find you?
Thank you. Plantbaseddietitian.com is my website. And I've got I'm all over social media and they're all up there. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, trying to get on TikTok. So yeah, but that's all because I have different names, either Julieanna Hever or Plant-Based Dietitian. So, but they're all on my plantbaseddietitian.com.
Okay, perfect. And that'll all be in the description as well. And my final question is, what is your number one health tip? Whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
Wow, that's a big question. It's an important one. I think I want to go back to, you're not broken. We're not broken. Your bodies work a certain way. And, you know, as much as we want to hear the good news about our bad habits or whatever, if you want something, you can make it happen. And don't let that perfection idea that doesn't exist get in your way. So just eat more plants, eat less animal products and less processed food, and keep it as simple as you possibly can. And don't give yourself so much pressure because you are human. And don't forget radical self-compassion.
Beautiful. I love it. Great answer. Thank you so much for joining me, Julieanna. This has been so much fun.
It has been so much fun to talk to you, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to check out all of Julieanna's links in the description and have a beautiful day. That concludes this episode. If this resonated with you, please give it a rating and review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Links are in the show notes. I sincerely thank you for your time and your presence.